Continuing our case study of an LIDC country, Zambia, the examiner will also expect us to know about how global connections have influenced its development. So a reminder that Zambia is our case study country located in southern Africa. By far Zambia's most influential global connection is its links to China. Zambia has several natural resources which it can try to trade with other countries to try and earn money to help it to develop. Zambia's most important resource is copper. Located mainly in the copper belt towards the north of the country, 64% of Zambia's exports are copper, and most of these go to China. Now, relying so heavily on one particular natural resource or commodity makes Zambia quite vulnerable to changes in copper prices. So the low copper prices from the 1970s held Zambia back, forcing them to borrow money. Zambia's other main exported products are tobacco and sugar. One type of global connection that affects development is foreign investment. Now, China have invested in several projects in Zambia. For example, in the 1970s, Chinese money helped build the Tazara Railway. This connects the copper belt in the north of Zambia all the way to the coast, a place called Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Now, this allows copper to be transported easily onto a big transport ship where it can be sold all around the world. Most of it actually goes to China, and so the Chinese investment, well, they get their benefit of that investment by getting cheap copper from Zambia. Another project that the Chinese invested in was expanding the Kariba Dam to produce more hydroelectric power. They've also helped build 8,000 kilometres of new roads. Is foreign investment overall a good thing for Zambia? Well, on the positive side, without it, Zambia simply wouldn't have the money to be able to do some of these large infrastructure projects like building the Tazara Railway. Ordinary Zambians can benefit from improved infrastructure. For example, if the roads are better, it makes it easier for ordinary people to get to work. Foreign investment enables Zambia to make use of its natural resources like copper and to be able to extract them from the ground and sell them to a foreign country. Zambia can obviously use that money to improve its schools and hospitals. But on the negative side, a bit like with colonialism, the foreign country investing arguably benefits more than Zambia itself. In this case, China benefits from a cheap supply of copper. In the long run, if Zambia exploits its natural resources, then the environment is spoilt for the future. For example, large mining projects cause deforestation, water pollution, and they're an eyesore. And arguably, China, as the foreign investor, isn't going to be that bothered about this because it's not affecting their country. Another type of investment comes from transnational companies. A quick reminder that a TNC is a transnational company, which means a company that operates in several countries. And most TNCs, they come from advanced countries such as the US or the UK, and they'll often have their headquarters in the AC home country. An example of a TNC in Zambia is the company Associated British Foods, or ABF for short. In 2001, ABF brought the Zambia Sugar Company, and so ABF now controls what is the largest sugar plantations and processing factories in the south of Zambia. These surround a town called Mazabuka. Is this TNC investment a good thing for Zambia? Well, on the positive side, Zambia Sugar provides more jobs than any other company, in this case 4,300 jobs. They look after its workers quite well. They provide free healthcare, and the families of workers get schooling for their children. The company and the workers will then pay tax to the government, and the government can use this tax money to further develop Zambia. The foreign TNC investor can provide the money, the expertise, and the machinery to allow Zambia to fully exploit and make use of its natural resources and make money from them, in this case, the sugar. But on the negative side, what often happens is the government in the LIDC country, they're so desperate for that TNC investment money to come in that they attract them by making them pay very little tax. And so ABF avoided paying tax in Zambia in 2013, despite it earning profits of $14 million. And what they did was they avoided the tax by transferring their profits from Zambia Sugar to some of ABF's other companies in countries that pay lower tax. TNCs, therefore, will often put their own profits above everything else and above the country Zambia. The wages paid to the LIDC workers, although not bad for in Zambia, they're very low by international standards. That's why the TNC wants to invest there in the first place. So those Zambia sugar workers will get about $120 a month. There's little incentive for the TNCs to look after the environment in a foreign country because it's not their country, and so there's less strict rules, and this has led to several Zambian villages actually having their drinking water polluted by a foreign mining company. A final global connection that we'll look at that influences Zambia's development is aid. International aid can be given officially by one country's government to another, and if it's multilateral, that means it's more than one country working together. If it's bilateral, it's just one country giving to another. Or the international aid can be voluntary aid. This is typically from a non-governmental organisation, an NGO, like a large charity, such as Oxfam. And again, the aid can be short-term. For example, if it's a natural disaster and the country needs some medicines and some supplies, or it can be long-term assistance. The example that we looked at in Zambia was water aid. So let's look at water aid briefly. 1 in 3 people still don't have access to clean water in Zambia. And so what water aid are doing is funding the building of wells to improve this. And in 1 year, water aid has provided 54,000 people with fresh water. Also linked to water is the fact that half of all Zambians don't have a decent toilet, and so that's led to 5,000 children dying a year from poor sanitation and general poor hygiene. And so WaterAid have introduced the Pupil Pipeline project. And so they built a network of piped water points and a toilet block for entire schools, such as the Simango School in Zambia. In the past, when Zambia has had to borrow lots of money when the copper prices were low, this meant that Zambia racked up some huge debts. And so one form of aid from richer countries or from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is to let Zambia off and to wipe those debts. Because what can happen is Zambia ends up spending more money paying off its debts than actually developing its own country, and so it stays stuck in poverty. And this is what's happened. So in 2006, Zambia received $6.5 billion of debt relief from the IMF, and they were immediately able to use that money to reduce school fees and increase the number of primary school children going to school. Another example is that Brazil in 2016 gave Zambia 80% of debt relief from the money that they owed back to Brazil. Overall, is debt a good or bad way for helping a country like Zambia to develop? Well, on the positive side, that money from advanced countries does help the world to become more equal. That aid money gives people in LIDCs like Zambia the basic essentials so they can start building a good life and future. Aid from advanced countries is arguably a way of paying back the imbalance that was created by colonialism. After all, countries like the UK benefited in the past from Zambia, so why shouldn't Zambia now be able to benefit from aid from the UK? And so people on this side would argue more aid is a good thing. On the negative side, what can happen is LIDCs may over-rely on that aid money instead of trying to build a sustainable economy for themselves. And so what happens is as soon as that aid money dries up, the country can be even worse off. Sometimes aid money might get wrongly used, such as by a corrupt government to fund wars or to make the elite richer.